Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Monday night, right? It is Monday, January 27th, 2025, 10:23 p.m. That's California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D Globe shows a 3.1, a little swarming going on here across the Java Trench. Quite a bit of uptick happening out here across the divergent boundary activity here, separation of seafloor between the Antarctica and the Nazca Plate boundary. That's going to be this cluster of quakes where we had a 5.7 and a 5.2 earlier today. Looks like that's adding further strain here across the Peru-Chile Trench. Noted a 5-pointer up here, one of the latest quakes along the Peru-Chile Trench following the divergent boundary activity. This whole plate here being subducted underneath the South America area. Let's go ahead and check out the states here, starting off with this earthquake up around the York Harbor, Maine region. 3.8 earthquake striking this morning here. This earthquake was felt fairly broadly across the region. Of course, these earthquakes that are east of the Rockies tend to be felt more at a distance compared to here in California. 3.8 would not show up that far across the region. Probably have to take it'd be at least a 6-pointer or 6.5 to show up at that distance there in California. So originally a 4.1, nothing big, but a look at historical data here. Let me show you guys real quick. I showed you this morning, but I want to pull up the latest map here in regards to historical data. There's today's 3.8. All right, so within the vicinity here of the 3.8 today, we're looking at other 3-pointers and 4-pointers. The last earthquake around this region was a 3.6 back in 2020, and that earthquake was a little bit further down south here in the blue circle. So earthquake activity, although not common out here, does happen, and sometimes they can get rather big in terms of the earthquake potential out here. So if we look at the USGS is freezing up on me here. What's going on? I just need the largest. That's what I'm looking at. There we go. A little weird. 6.5 struck out here in the central New Hampshire area back in 1638. Could you imagine a 6.5 out here today? That would be felt and probably do damage across the entire region. That 1638, yeah, well over 300 years, coming up on 400 years there since the last major rupture. So we can see some larger earthquake activity out here. Historic data shows us that, and no doubt that will happen again. 5.9, a little bit closer to that 3.8 today compared to that 6-pointer. That was back in 1755, so a long time has passed since then as well. There's an earthquake 5.5, 1727, and so on. So, we don't need to talk about every single quake that happens out here. The thing is, this area is in it's a hazard zone where we can see some big earthquakes, and history has shown that. Almost 400 years since the last big one out here. Are we overdue for something bigger or something as big here in the near future? Who knows? But these little quakes here, just a friendly reminder of some not so friendly quakes here in the forecast, or in the future, I should say, for this area. Just got to be on guard. California is not the only area that gets big earthquakes. New York down here has had a number of big earthquakes historically as well. So we're all built up. Our skyscrapers, our big cities, we're civilized, right? We're populated the land, got buildings and infrastructure all over the place. But least not forget that infrastructure can be destroyed in a matter of minutes following a large earthquake out here that has happened historically. Just don't forget. Doesn't matter if it's California or the East Coast. All up and down the East Coast here, you got potential for some large-scale activity down in South Carolina region. That, big earthquakes out there. New Madrid seismic zone, so... let me check this out here. Since then, it looks as though the latest quake in this area, 2.2 outside of Reno, Ohio. I didn't even know there was a Reno, Ohio out there. Interesting. It's on the border there with the West Virginia region. Went to school out there in Columbus, Ohio, back when I was a little youngster. I think it was first grade. I can't quite remember, but I remember it snowed, and it was beautiful. So it does look like we have, some activity stirring out here across the East Coast. And it's something to watch, obviously. The New Madrid seismic zone, we got one earthquake here earlier this morning on 1.5. This region in the last few months has been more active than in the previous years. And, of course, this is the area that had a upper 7, low 8 magnitudes back in 1811, 1812. Could you imagine an 8-pointer around this area today? Yeah, I can't. I mean, I can, but man, talk about damage, right? We're so well situated in our time period here that we're living. Everything's grown. Population has grown. Advancement has taken off the charts, but history shows us that can end with some big earthquakes here. So continue to keep an eye there on a few regions. Obviously, when elevated activity shows up, we got to watch these areas that haven't seen a big earthquake in almost 400 years. That should tell you something right there, that things could be getting active here very soon across that region. Following that earthquake this morning, a 4.2 in the Idaho area near Clayton, Idaho. That is just off the Sawtooth Fault System, in between the Sawtooth and a couple other different fault systems here. Pretty decent earthquake. That earthquake in itself was felt across the region, but, larger magnitude. But look, very minimal in terms of the size, distance out here. Of course, Idaho, a lot of mountainous regions up there. Beautiful country. But not a whole lot of damage from that earthquake, 4.2 earlier this morning. That earthquake itself showed up pretty nicely here across the Yellowstone area. Let me show you guys. I got to remember to slow down here on my cursor movement, man, because I can go much faster than this. I really don't want to, but that's just how my brain works, the computing process. So Yellowstone National Park right here. Can you guys spot the 4-pointer? Yeah, that's not a local earthquake there to Yellowstone. That's just a 4.2 that showed up in Idaho. But this goes to show you what seismograph stations are working and maybe which ones are tuned down in terms of not picking up data. Obviously, Holmes Hill, not a bleep. We probably wouldn't even get a signature if an asteroid hit this area. So obviously some of these stations are not properly tuned right. Pelican Cove, Mirror Lake. But the majority of the stations out here that are working properly did show that 4-pointer. No adjustment there to Yellowstone in terms of any elevated activity. Sometimes nearby earthquakes can trigger swarms across Yellowstone, but it doesn't look like we've seen anything following that 4.2 there in Idaho earlier. A couple smaller quakes there, but that was happening prior to the 4.2 as well. But beautiful signature. Pacific Northwest, pretty quiet. A couple smaller earthquakes there across the volcanoes there along the Cascades. Northern California, 2s and 3s and the rare ones. I say that because, well, over the past couple months here, since that 7-pointer out here, they've failed to report a number of 1-pointers out here that have been striking the seismograph stations out here. So it looks like maybe they got the memo here in regards to the earthquake activity that's been happening on the Petrolia station in terms of lower 1-grade magnitude 1s. It looks like they finally decided to add those onto the map here. Thank you, whoever's behind that. Cascadia subduction zone. Let's check out the tremor map here this evening, see what we got. 269. A little bit of movement up north here from our normal region that we've seen here in the last couple of weeks, up around the Seattle area, Washington region, underneath the strain. This is not volcanic tremor, but tremor down into the subduction zone, 35, 45 kilometers deep or so. And of course, when that takes place, it's a slow vibrational frequency. What's a word I'm looking for? I'd like to say rub, so to speak, between the two plates, and it's sending off a low frequency vibration that's being picked up by the tremor equipment. So that activity is straining the areas upstream here. And of course, Cascadia has been pretty active here in terms of tremor activity recently, mainly across the southern end. But tonight, a little bit of movement there across Washington. Really no major adjustment upstream here that is noted across Cascadia for now. A couple smaller quakes there across northern California. Some on the west side of the valley near Arbuckle. That's out there in Colusa County. Know that area quite well. Nothing big, but there is a thrust fault that is out here across the west side of the valley. That earthquake today, 2.3 near Arbuckle, 3.4 miles below the surface. Some movement up around Lake Almanor as well with a couple twos. Well, one 2-pointer and a 1-pointer. Nothing big going on there for now. San Francisco Bay, pretty quiet as well, aside from a couple microquakes. 1.3 near Pinnacles in the last hour. That's actually in the last couple minutes. Long Valley Supervolcano. Got a couple smaller quakes up there. Really nothing big for now. Taking a look here at Southern California, the 2.5 map, well, pretty much removes all the earthquakes aside from a 2.6 down here off of the Elsinore Fault. It's been a little while since we've seen, any strain or stress out here against the Elsinore Fault, and that fault system can definitely produce some big earthquakes. So, of course, Southern California has been underneath the gun here in terms of strain and stress out here. And it's been building out here big time. It's been, 300 and something years since a major rupture out here along the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. San Diego area, man, they can see some big earthquakes as well, but history tells us that, those quakes are possible here in the future. And it's been quite a while since big earthquakes out here as well. So elevated activity, nothing big happening out there for now. A couple earthquakes there across the Nevada region. Texas area, got a 3-pointer out there across this area. Outside of Pecos, I can almost be certain what's out here. Very close here to a oil pumping operation here, or some type of fracking operation. If we look at the last 30 days or so, man, this is no brainer here that earthquake activity is increasing across the oil fields and the fracking operations out there where they do the wastewater injection process. Got to remember the strain out here against the continents and the North American plate and so on is always underneath strain. Always underneath the strain. So these weaker areas that has had some adjustment to it due to man-made activity is taking the hit. All right, largest earthquake, of course, is going to be that 5.7 here across the Chile Rise area. That is a divergent boundary region that should enhance areas out here across the Peru-Chile Trench. And it looks like it's already happening there with that 4.1. Just about an hour or so later, following this earthquake activity, it's a separation here of the seafloor and the fracture zone. Valdivia fracture zone to be exact. And if you look here, they don't show it on the map, but this area is separating right along this boundary, right where the hand is. And when that takes place, the Nazca plate here is being shoved underneath the South America region. So it's a major subduction zone. So any activity that stirs up here across the East Pacific, the Chile Rise area, puts strain out here against the Peru-Chile Trench. And that's obviously been shown here with that 5.0, the most recent earthquake. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. Man, I wish I could get my voice back from normal. I don't know what it is, folks. It's annoying is what it is, actually. Got a bunch of lectures coming up, and it's like, how am I going to speak? Let's see here. What else we got? Alaska calming down. Not a whole lot going on up there for now. Still watching the area of the Nankai Trough. New Zealand, not a whole lot happening in terms of larger scale movement. There might be some microquake activity out there around the volcanoes, but nothing big happening for now. A lot of movement north here along the north of the Himalayas. Of course, this area has seen some decent movement out here with that 7.1 in the Tibet area, north of the Everest area, Mount Everest, just due north of Mount Everest. It does look like recent movement there has produced quite a bit of strain into this area, 4.6, 4.3. This is another major region where strain builds up from the plate boundary northward. And it's showing, definitely showing out there. Out in the Indian Ocean, a couple of smaller quakes. Nothing going on there across the rift boundary out there. I can double check that, make sure. I know the USGS is not showing anything, but let's just double check here on the live recorded seismograph stations. By the way, earlier today I reported, or I reposted a decent video on my pages there of a seismologist and a fairly well knowledgeable individual in regards to what's going on there in the Eastern Africa Rift Zone. Check it out if you haven't got a chance there. It's posted up on YouTube and on my posts and Facebook and stuff like that. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity there localized. In fact, I don't see anything. This is not a localized event. That's a distant earthquake, distant S waves. Looks like things have calmed down there. Now, obviously, recently we've seen an elevated event take place out here due to magma movement and the rift boundary activity. But these things can happen, and they have happened throughout the years in terms of quickness, in terms of the rift boundary activity. I want to bring up the catalog up here, show you guys this area specifically. We're going to draw a little rectangle or square, or I can't really draw a triangle, but we'll draw something out here across this the rift boundary out here. This back up. 4.7 looks like was from last night. So we'll cover this area. I just want to show you guys here real quick. I'm going 4.5 since the year 1000 or so. So here's the most recent activity. As you can see in the background there, there has been a number of earthquakes. It looks like in the year 2024, there was quite a bit of swarming out here in the rift boundary. 1938 showed us a 6.0 to the east here on the Ethiopia rift boundary. As you can see, it's a slow process. Sometimes there's elevated activity. But right now, it looks like things have calmed down in terms of the elevated activity. We'll continue to watch it. Obviously, what's taken place here is the spreading here of the continent of East Africa. This will eventually fill in here with an ocean, and this whole region will be separate from the Africa continent. But that's probably millions of years down the road. All right? A lot of people think that this is happening really quickly. But in order for that to happen really quickly, we would be talking about 7s and 8s on every single day taking place. And then eventually, within the matter of a couple of years, that would separate. But we're not going to see that. It's not taking place here. This has happened in the past, 2024, and it's happened elsewhere across the rift boundary. So right now, I don't see any worry going on. I'd like to monitor and reach out and explore the information factually when it comes to earthquake swarms out here across the rift boundary. And Again, there's a really good video that I reposted there from a seismologist. Wow, what do we got up here? A little 4.7 off the coast of Russia. Pretty shallow earthquake here. Not into the subduction zone, but obviously the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench here is fairly well primed for some larger activity. It's been primed here for a number of years for sure. All right, let's see. Atlantic Ocean pretty quiet. Peru-Chile Trench active. Yeah, it looks like we're starting to fill back in here from the north area, so that should amplify some conditions here across Taiwan, Japan region. Got to watch the Nankai Trough. I've been talking about that a lot because I personally feel that we're going to see some mega quake activity out here soon. Space weather, anything major going on in the sun? As expected, no. My flare threat has been low for a couple days, and that's due to obvious reasons out here. We're not looking at any major sunspot activity on the Earth-facing side of the sun. But take a gander up here. Man, what is that? Oh, that looks like... well, that's 39. It's already named 3977, 3976. That looks like a massive area of potential very active activity. So it's got another day or so before it comes into a little bit more perspective of a view in terms of determining the magnetic complexity. But that looks like a massive area. So we'll watch that. It's currently flaring, it looks like, with some C flare activity. A couple of C flares out on the western limb as well, but those are out of sight, out of mind, and will continue to do so. This baby right here, though, needs to be watched quite closely. We'll see here in the coming days what it has in store. A coronal hole out here, number 11, will be facing Earth here in the coming days. That will probably enhance the solar wind stream. Not really expecting much, though, in terms of the aurora outlook. We'll see what happens, though, following the arrival of that solar wind stream and any other subsequent CMEs from any flaring there from those sunspots. We'll definitely keep an eye on those. Goodness, I'm telling you. No major auroras there in the forecast for now. Aurora activity, pretty minimal. Storm Prediction Center, we got a severe weather threat here as we head into day 3 and day 4. All right, that's going to be happening out here across Texas area. They got already a 15% chance for some severe weather. That's due to the low pressure system that's been bringing rain and snow across Southern California. That's going to scoot east, stir up some super high dew points for this time of year across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas area. Severe weather potential as we head into Wednesday and Thursday. We'll cover that a little bit more as we get closer. California on tap there to return to a wet pattern. Thank you very much to whoever. There's at least a couple days here. The rainy pattern begins towards the end of this week into this weekend. And it's mainly a Northern California event, roughly San Francisco northward. Southern California, not so much. And then after that, looks like cold air returning out here across the West Coast. It's been a crazy winter in terms of the dynamics out here. You know, rare snow across the south, super dry out here across California. In fact, the drought out here is getting ridiculous right now. Everything's super dry, but I'm hopeful here with the promise of rain coming up here. Show you guys the drought monitoring out here. Look at this, man. We are looking at exceptional drought, extreme drought across northwestern California and southwestern Oregon. These guys have been wet earlier in the winter, but January was an awful dry month out here. That's at the surface level. The deeper areas, not so much up here, but still it's starting to creep in a little bit. And I'm already having to water my plants out here, my trees and stuff, because everything's drying up. So that's the drought intensity. The moisture anomaly out here is crazy across the West Coast at the surface. Deeper levels are getting in there as well. The soil moisture, as you can see, deeper, still wet down there, way deep. The surface levels, not so much here across Northern California, but hopefully we get some rain to damper off this intruding drought condition that we have out here. Any fire activity going on? Let's go ahead and check there. I know they've had some rain and stuff in Southern California. Give a quick gander here at the fires. It looks like the Border 2 fire getting a handle on, 55% containment. No hot spots being observed there across satellite imagery. And pretty much the same for the other ones. Palisades fire, not 100% containment, but 95%. Nothing being observed in terms of hot spots. So it's good news. Hopefully the wet weather down there has helped out with the any potential fire starts out there in Southern California. All right, let's see. Not a whole lot happening right now. Some very small spikes there in Petrolia, Yellowstone, China Lake. That's kind of been like that off and on here throughout the day today, indicating strain out here across the plate boundary. All right, have a good one, folks. We'll catch you guys back out here in the morning for the Tuesday morning update. I'm going to call it a night. Kind of late out here. Got school early in the morning, so I'm going to be busy here on this end, but I still will be doing my daily updates and, trying to do the education thing as well. So we'll catch you guys back out here tomorrow. Have a good night. Please stay safe out there. There's a lot going on, folks. I do think that we're entering into it just hasn't started yet. Obviously, elevated activity amplified out here, but nothing big happening. But I do think we're going to see some sequence of events out here in terms of larger scale activity. The question is where and when. But we'll definitely report back on it whenever it happens for sure. Have a good night. We'll catch you guys out here in the morning.